Good evening, everybody. Happy Wednesday. A rare midweek Premier League game for Norwich City this evening. We're here at the King Power Stadium. The weather is glorious. Sadly, not much for Norwich City to play for, but still 1,300 fans have travelled up from Norfolk and various places for this game tonight, which shows you that there's still plenty on the line in terms of a performance for those guys, especially given what we saw on Sunday. I'll hopefully be joined by Paddy Davitt in a moment or two to talk about the team news, which should be dropping any moment now, and we'll bring that to you, of course, as it happens. As I kind of look out across the pitch, we're sat at the top of the kind of the stand opposite where the Norwich City fans are in that corner. Luckily, fortunately, we're in the shade. I think there's a few Norwich fans with their hands above their eyes, simply because the sun is shining so much. And here we go. We should be able to bring in Mr. Davitt. Paddy, an interesting one tonight in terms of Dean Smith has obviously made clear that really for Norwich City, the only thing to play for is to leapfrog Watford, and that £2 million, I suppose, whether that matters to a player or not, I suppose is up for debate. But I suppose it's about science for next season, isn't it, really? And I do have the team news, so I'll come back to you on that point. And Dean Smith has made 4 changes, and they're interesting as well. Angus Gunn starts for Norwich City in goal. Aarons, Hanley, Byram and Yanulis at the back 4. Gilmore and Rupp, the midfield 2. Tony Springett gets a start on the right. Milo Rashica on the left. And Pierre Lace-Malou behind Timu Pukki. So plenty to dissect and talk about there. The subs bench, Tim Krul, Ben Gibson, Brandon Williams, Jacob Sorensen, Liam Gibbs, Kieran Dow, Crystal Solis, John Rowe and Shemiswav Puaheta. So that's 4 changes for Norwich City. Gunn, Yanulis, Rupp and Springett in. Krul, Williams, Sorensen and Dowell out. Pad, I suppose we better start with the goalkeeper, really, given the mistakes that Tim Krul has made in the last few weeks. Does this come as a major surprise to see Angus Gunn in between the sticks tonight?
No, I mean, I do, for the print paper, I have to do a panel of formation predicted, and I had a bit of a dilemma because I just felt, and I sort of did err on the side of Krul, but given what Dean Smith said, can't remember now, recently, about if they keep making individual errors, then I'm sorry. I think his phrase was something along, if their fingerprints, which is pertinent talking about keepers, but if their fingerprints are on too many errors, they need to come out the side. And that has happened certainly with the outfield players. Ben Gibson is the one that springs to mind. Sam Byram again starting alongside Grant Hanley in the middle of the defence. But so far, Tim Krul had managed to survive. But I guess 2 errors on the first 2 goals on Sunday, on top of the Newcastle 3rd goal. You could put that at his door as well, and there's been 1 or 2 others. So no, I'm not surprised. And to be honest, I think Angus was a little bit hard done by to come out when he did, because it felt like that run around the turn of the year where he'd got a few games that maybe started off a little bit fragile. But by the end of that run, I felt he was really starting to show his personality on albeit still a tough situation, but was making 1 or 2 decent saves in games. And, I can understand why Dean went back to Tim Krul at that stage for the experience factor and such a big character inside the dressing room as well. But that doesn't surprise me, if I'm honest, no, because if you take Dean Smith at his word, then Tim Krul probably has reached the threshold of errors where he comes out the side. Equally, I thought Rupp would start when he was talking him up yesterday. He obviously put him on at half-time midweek and then talked about the lack of athleticism, and then followed that up yesterday by saying that but for injuries, I think Lucas Rupp would have had a bigger role to play, certainly down the stretch this season. So not surprised at all. And obviously William as well, we know what's sort of gone on around him after the game on Sunday. So that isn't a huge surprise either. Tony Springett starting, well, Dean Smith was eulogising about him yesterday and his impact, albeit at 3-0 down on Sunday. But still a brave call, really, still a big call. But ultimately, I think where Norwich are now in terms of the situation, he's not got too much to lose, really. And Lace-Malou, I thought, might be the one to make way, but he's gone with him instead of Dowell. So, yeah, I can kind of see where Dean Smith is going with that 11. But, yeah, maybe it's a big call in terms of taking Tim Krul out because of the personality he is. But for me, I don't think he'll have any complaints. And the sort of character he is and the professional he is, he'd probably agree that, he hasn't been up to scratch. And obviously, we're here now in the midst of 3 games left of this season, but in the bigger picture of what next season looks like and who's going to be on that journey, great opportunity for Angus Gunn to really put down a marker and follow up what he did around the turn of the year and say, no, I want to be your number 1 in the Championship. And, if he plays well tonight, you'd expect him to retain his place at Wolves and then he's putting together a consistent argument that maybe it is a time for the changing of the guard.
Yes, absolutely. We'll talk about some more of those changes in depth in just a moment. I'll just bring you the Leicester team. They've got Schmeichel in goal, Castagna, Evans, Amati and James Justin in the back four, Tielemans, Maddison and Dewsbury Hall, the midfield three, Lookman, Barnes complementing on either wing with Vardy up front as well. Their subs bench, Ward, Sanucci, Thomas, Mendy, Albrighton, Perez, Daka and Iheanacho. So an interesting starting 11. Obviously, James Maddison back in the side, and Norwich have managed to contain him. I think the last few occasions that Norwich have played Leicester. Hopefully that remains tonight. But yeah, just back on Tony Springett. I mean, there was maybe questions after Daniel Farke left about whether whoever came next would be as invested in embedding young players, irrespective of maybe the state of play or the opposition, I suppose, as well. Dean Smith, I think, so far has shown that he is willing to offer young players a chance, as is the ethos of this club. We know that, and has been the case since Stuart Webber arrived in 2017. But I mean, is it a difficult one to throw a young player, because he's held back on starting John Rowe, and I think maybe the assumption is that you don't want young players to be tarnished too much by what has happened this season, or to have their confidence knocked by being associated with what has happened this season. So does that show how much faith he has in Tony Springett, that he feels he can not just adapt to the situation tonight, but also in terms of the context of where Norwich City are in the Premier League?
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned him there, and I thought this after Sunday. Wasn't at the game, but when I saw that Springett had came on, and then Waheta had come on, and John Rowe had stayed on the bench, and again he's on the bench tonight, and not a senior professional knocking him out of the equation, but one of his development teammates. So that's an interesting dynamic as well. What has Dean Smith maybe seen from Springett that he hasn't seen from Rowe on training pitches? Because around the turn of the year, it was John Rowe was very much seen as at the vanguard of this young talent pool coming up from development. But so it's maybe just a reminder to John Rowe that whatever Dean Smith has felt gives Tony Springett the edge, that he maybe needs to incorporate that in his own game. And obviously Jolis on the bench as well, another very young, wide player, albeit from a different sort of career path to the Norwich first team. But yeah, I'm really interested to see. I didn't obviously see him at the weekend, so I'm really interested to see what Tony Springett can bring in this environment. Easier probably to start a young player, I think, away from home in terms of the current situation. That to me makes a lot of sense. Not that you would say that the Carrow crowd have been getting on the backs of these players, because they haven't, but it's obviously, we all know, we don't need to rake over the coals at the moment, but it's a very difficult situation at the minute to play for Norwich City and handle that pressure and that sort of sense of a season that has again failed in a big way, and all the questions that are now being asked of the relevant actors at the football club. So he clearly, irrespective of the guy's ability, he clearly feels temperament-wise, character-wise, Tony Springett can handle that. And I mean, who knows? This could be the start of something tonight. If he doesn't look out of place, if he adds something that Norwich have been missing, then from small acorns, who knows? This could be the start of Tony Springett in the Norwich first team on a more regular basis. But I guess if you're Dean Smith, then ultimately, at this stage now, given the primary objective is gone in terms of being relegated, and there was more than one or two fans. I mean, I was feeling he might go this route a little bit earlier than he has done, and give the Rose, give the Springett as it is now. Maybe even look at a lad like Flynn Clark in the centre of the park. Our former colleague Dave Freezer watched him playing for the 23s recently and said there was more than a Maddison element to him. Well, I think of James Maddison and what he brought to a championship lineup in Norwich colours, and if he's got that type of creativity, I'd like to have a look at him, because he might well be needed next season. So, yeah, and I think also as well, 1,300 fans here today, they need something. They're not getting it in terms of results, they're not getting it in terms of performances, but if they see something from a young player who can be part of something a bit more optimistic moving forward, then, that's a win-win as well. So, for me, it's... There's quite a few intriguing subplots to this Norwich lineup tonight, and that is very much one of them. Can Tony Springett take the opportunity that has been afforded him?
Yeah, I mean, also looking at midfield as well. I mean, you mentioned Lise Malou, Rashica as well, two players that got hooked at half-time on Sunday. Both start today's game. You look at that midfield too, Lucas Rupp and Billy Gilmore. It doesn't feel like either of that. Well, so certainly from what we're gathering, it doesn't feel like either of those are going to be here next season. Obviously, Billy Gilmore on loan and Lucas Rupp out of contract. So, I mean, it's interesting in that you've got players who are almost, you're hoping to kind of throw it forward like Tony Springett, but you've also got players in there who maybe won't be part of what's next as well. It's a real mismatch, which I suppose sums up where Norwich City are at the moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously I wasn't there on Sunday, but Rashica getting hooked after 45 minutes. I'm assuming he wasn't exactly covering himself in glory and hasn't done in these last few games as well. If I think back to sort of Liverpool, he scored obviously his solitary Premier League goal that day, but just his general performance. And at that point, he looked like ready to take a step forward. And sadly, for him and Norwich, it's gone into reverse. And I'll be frankly amazed if he's here at the start of next season. You know, the noises that are coming out of his homeland would suggest that, you mentioned in the car journey over that, Serie A clubs and Bundesliga clubs. And Bundesliga, to me, would be an obvious exit strategy, given that his reputation is still probably intact over there. But he was Norwich's biggest summer signing in terms of finance last summer, just from Josh Sargent and Zolis, and benchmarked against that, he's been a massive disappointment. And not just him, but so much was expected of him, I think, to provide that creativity at the highest level, and it hasn't happened. And I guess to follow on from the previous discussion, if you went Springett on one side and John Rowe on the left, that would be probably overly bold and overly showing of faith in youth. And yes, you want to integrate these players, but you still need a few experienced lads around them, particularly in forward areas. So I can kind of see where Dean Smith is coming from in terms of the two either side of Pukki. I think this is probably the beginning of the end for Mila Rashica in terms of Norwich City.
Good stuff, Paddy. Thank you very much. I'll recap that Norwich City team for you again. Angus Gunn in goal, Aarons, Byram, Hanley, and Yanulis the back four. Rupp and Gilmore the midfield two. Rashica on the right. Tony Springett on the right. Apologies. Mila Rashica on the left with Pierre Lees-Malou behind Timu Pukki. A sub-bench of Tim Krul, Ben Gibson, Kieran Dow, Shemiswaf Quaeta, Christos Solis, Brandon Williams, who, if I look over into that Norwich City away end, if he needs reminding that there is some love out there for him. I can see the banner that was captured at Aston Villa, the one that says we'd like you to stay, Brandon Williams, although I'm guessing that's what he's saying. He's certainly got his face on it anyway. Liam Gibson, John Rowe make up the Norwich City bench. Leicester lineup with Schmeichel in goal, James Justin Evans, Amati and Castagna as their back four. Dewsbury Hall, Maddison and Tielemans the midfield three, with Lookman, Barnes and Vardy, their front three, their subs bench. Sonucci, Albrighton, Ward, Iheanacho, Perez, Mendy, Daka and Thomas. We're here at the King Power Stadium, of course. The Thinking Plus app, the place to go for all the updates as they happen on the live blog, all the analysis and reaction as well. You can find more details about taking out a month's free trial on pinkin.com. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again very soon.